Hello dear students, Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Ashraf and you're watching Ashraf Kakar channel. Dear students, in this lecture we will be talking about the Kyoto Protocol, which was the first agreement and protocol in order to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions from the world and reduce the threats for the climate change. It was the Kyoto Protocol. So before going into detail about the Kyoto Protocol, we need to know the background of this Kyoto Protocol. In the year 1992, the UN conference was convened for the purpose of environment and development. ठीक है, एनवायरमेंट को प्रोटेक्शन के लिए और एनवायरमेंट में मजीद डेवलपमेंट के लिए उन्होंने एक कॉन्फ्रेंस बुलाया जिसमें एक दे फ्रेमवर्क द यूनाइटेड नेशंस फ्रेमवर्क कन्वेंशन ऑन क्लाइमेट चेंज. उन्होंने एक बॉडी बनाई जिसे नाम दिया गया UNFCCC, द यूनाइटेड नेशंस फ्रेमवर्क कन्वेंशन ऑन द क्लाइमेट चेंज. फिर इसी UNFCCC के अम्ब्रेला के तहत इन द ईयर 1995 एक मीटिंग होती है, फर्स्ट मीटिंग आल्सो एज द फर्स्ट कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑफ पार्टीज, एंड दिस कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑफ पार्टीज मीटिंग्स आल्सो हेल्ड ईच ईयर टिल नाउ फॉर द पर्पस टू रिड्यूस द emissions of the greenhouse gases. Then again, under the umbrella of UNFCCC, their meeting convened in the year 1997 in the city of Japan, Kyoto, called as the Kyoto Protocol, जिसे हम आज पढ़ने वाले हैं, which is called as the Kyoto Protocol, in order to outline the broad emissions reductions of the greenhouse gases. फिर 2004 में Russia and Canada, which were the major contributors in the emission of the greenhouse gases, these two countries ratified the Kyoto Protocol. और ये फिर नाफिजुल अमल में लेकर जाती है in the year 2005. On 16 Feb 2005, this treaty, the Kyoto Protocol, came into force. अब देखें, ये बनी थी in the year 1997 में, लेकिन फोर्स में आई थी in the year 2005. इसकी वजह क्या है कि इतने 7-8 साल इसमें गैप इसलिए आया क्योंकि इसमें जो मेजर कंट्रीब्यूटर्स है ऑफ द ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस एमिशंस, जिसमें USA है, which signed the treaty in 1998 in the government of Bill Clinton. ठीक है, but the cabinet of President Clinton that did not ratify the agreement. They were not agreed in order to sign the Kyoto Protocol. और 2001 में आप देखें कि USA in the government of George W. Bush, उनकी गवर्नमेंट में वापस छोड़ देती हैं इस प्रोटोकॉल को. ठीक है, the USA withdraw from the Kyoto Protocol in the year 2001. देखें 2005 में जब इसकी रेटिफिकेशन होती है, फिर 2008 से 2012 तक इसकी फर्स्ट कमिटमेंट पीरियड होती है जिसमें मुख्तलिफ कंट्रीज कमिटमेंट करते हैं इन ऑर्डर टू रिड्यूस द ग्रीन हाउस गैसेज एमिशंस. देन इसकी सेकंड कमिटमेंट होती है 2013 से 2020 तक, called as the second commitment period, or also called as the Doha Agreement because it was held in the city of Qatar, Doha. अच्छा, 2001 में USA विड्रॉ, और 2012 में ये डेट भी आप नोट रखें कि कनाडा विड्रॉल. These two countries withdrawal in 2001 and 2012. अब इसमें से parties कौन सी हैं? These parties were categorized into 3 types. First one is the Annex 1, non-Annex 1. Third is the Annex 2 parties. Annex 1 parties वो हैं which were also the members of the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They were also the EIT, means economic in transitions, like for example those countries which were got their independence, from the former USSR, like the 15 countries, the Eastern European countries, some Central European countries, and 5 countries of the Central Asia. So these were also held under the Annex 1 parties, and they were the binding targets. They were given the binding targets. They had to have to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Then comes the Annex 1, non-Annex 1 parties. Non-Annex 1 मतलब नॉन बाइंडिंग कंट्रीज. ये वो कंट्रीज है जो कि ना कि OECD के मेंबर्स हैं और ना कि they were the binding countries. They were the developing countries like Pakistan, China, and India. Then comes the next two parties. The next two parties were the members of the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and they were not the EIT, means they were not given the independence before or after the 1990s. They were not members of the EIT. They were only developed countries, and they were given task in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And they also, the next two parties also had to have helped the developing countries by many new projects. So then come the objective. So before the objective, there comes the common principle for all the Kyoto Protocol members parties. It says that the principle is common but differentiated responsibilities, that each party will be given their own responsibilities, but they are given the same work, the common work, in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And each work is distinguished according to the three categorization of Annex 1, non-Annex, and Annex 2 parties. But come the legally binding factors, is they are binded in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. These points comes for the Annex 1 parties, that they must reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. Then come, they should establish, the Annex 1 parties should establish adaptation funds for the climate change. Annex 1 parties, chunke they are responsible for the emission of the greenhouse gases, so they should make funds, they should establish funds in order to reduce the climate change, in order to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. And they are also held responsible for minimizing the impacts on the developing countries. As we all know that the greenhouse gases emissions are only done by the developed countries because of their industrialization, because of their infrastructural work, so they emit more greenhouse gases. But because of their function, thus because of their activities, their relative countries, the responsible countries which are developing, which are not contributing in the emission of the greenhouse gases, but they are affected. So the Annex 1 countries which are industrialized, they held responsible in order to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions, and they should establish different funds in the developing countries as well. Then they should establish the accounting, reviewing, and reporting annually, so that every country should give its support annually for the integration of the protocol. ठीक है, प्रोटोकॉल को इंटीग्रेट करने के लिए, प्रोटोकॉल को फायदेमंद बनाने के लिए हर साल मुख्तलिफ कंट्रीज वो अपनी एनुअल रिपोर्ट देते हैं, उसको रिव्यू करते हैं कि कौन सा कंट्री क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल के तहत परफॉर्म कर रहा है और कौन सा नहीं. Then comes the Kyoto Protocol mechanisms. They established three types of mechanisms under the Kyoto Protocol, called as the joint implementation (JI), the clean development mechanism (CDM), then the international emission trading. Joint implementation is written in Article 6 of the UNFCCC. They have said, देखिए इसमें जो Annex 1 countries है, which are the industrialized countries, they invest in the technology or other funds in the Annex 1 party B. देखें इसमें से दोनों Annex 1 है, दोनों industrialized हैं, दोनों developed states हैं. जो developed state A है वो invest करती है developed state B में, ठीक है, like for example in the form of technology, in the form of any investment. In the result B state जो है वो देता है A state को ERU emission reduction units, ठीक है. इन द रिजल्ट A स्टेट को क्या मिलता है, देखें Annex 1 के जो A स्टेट है, इट हैज इन्वेस्टेड इन B स्टेट. अच्छा, जब वहां पर एमिशन रिडक्शन का काम होता है, एज अ रिजल्ट A स्टेट को क्या मिलता है, A स्टेट को ERU यूनिट्स मिलते हैं, एमिशन रिडक्शन यूनिट्स मिलते हैं, ठीक है. Then the second, the clean development mechanism, is mentioned in the Article 12 of the UNFCCC. It has said that Annex 1 country or party which is a developed state, it invests in the form of technology, in the form of any other investment in the non-Annex 1 party which is a developing country. For example, the United States, which is come under the Annex 1 country, or some of the European states, they come under the Annex 1 country, they invest in Pakistan, India, or China, which are under non-Annex 1 party. So in the result, they Annex 1 will be awarded CER certified emission reduction. ठीक है, लेकिन चूंकि उन्होंने अपने मुल्क में तो एमिशन रिड्यूस नहीं किया, बल्कि उन्होंने इन्वेस्ट करके नॉन एनेक्स पार्टी जो है या डेवलपिंग स्टेट है उसमें क्या रिडक्शन का काम किया, कोई हाइड्रो पावर लगा दिया, कोई ऐसी क्लीन एनर्जी का काम किया जिसकी वजह से वो वहां पर जो क्लीन एनर्जी एनवायरमेंट पैदा करने के बदले एनेक्स 1 को क्या मिलते हैं, सर्टिफाइड एमिशन रिडक्शंस मिलते हैं. देन कम्स द इंटरनेशनल एमिशन ट्रेडिंग. देखिए IET, it stated in Article 17 of the United Nations Framework Convention on the climate change. Here the Annex 1 party sell or buy the carbon emissions or carbon credits from other Annex 1 party. इसमें से दोनों developed state हैं, state A and state B, they are both come under the Annex 1 parties. Like for example, the USA or Australia, which is a developed state, and Japan, which is also a developed state, under the Annex 1 party. अब ऑस्ट्रेलिया को एक साइन मिला है ताकि वो 100 क्रेडिट यूनिट से कम रहे, लेकिन इसने अपनी मिशन को है एक्सीड किया है, 110 पे चला गया. अब इसकी जो 10 है, अब ऑन द अदर हैंड जापान, विच इज आल्सो एनेक्स 1 कंट्री, इसने अपने यूनाइटेड क्रेडिट्स जो है वो 90 पे रखे हैं. तो इसके लिए जो इसके 10 है, ठीक है, 10 और ये अपने 10 दे देता है इस ऑस्ट्रेलिया को. इन द रिजल्ट दे बोथ मैनेज बाय ट्रेडिंग द कार्बन emission gases. So dear students, under the Kyoto Protocol there had two commitments by the Annex 1 parties. First was between 2008 and 2012, and the other one was between 2013 to 2020. So in the first commitment period, it was said that the Annex 1 parties had to commit with the binding factors in order to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions by reduction of the level by 5% as compared to 1990. In between the years 2008 and 2012, the Annex 1 parties, which were the developed and industrialized countries, they were committed, they were held responsible to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 5% at the level of 1990 में से जो उनकी एमिशन का लेवल था उनसे 5% कम करेंगे उनकी एमिशन लेवल. Then there were 6 gases, 4 are the gases and 2 are a group of gases in which the carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, sulfur hexafluoride, the hydrofluorocarbons and the perfluorocarbons. These were the 6 gases which they had to reduce by 5% as compared to 1990. मतलब 2000 आने से पहले 5% की एमिशन में कमी होनी चाहिए. According to the European Environment Agency EA, it was surveyed that the European Union reduced 12.2% as compared to 1990. जब 2012 में देखा गया कि भाई इसे सर्वे किया गया, बजाय कि 5% कम करने का उन्होंने एक्सीड कर दिया अपनी टारगेट और they reduced the greenhouse gases emission by 12.2%. अच्छा, ग्लोबली अगर हम देखें, the greenhouse gases emissions increased by 24% as compared to the 1990. 2010 और 1990 के बीच में जो 1990 में जो लेवल था, it was increased 24% in the year 2010 because there were new emerging economies. They were also held responsible for the emission of the greenhouse gases. Then comes the second commitment period, which was between 2013 to 2020. Here also the Annex 1 parties, they committed to reduce the greenhouse gases emission by 18% as compared to the 1990. अच्छा, फर्स्ट कमिटमेंट पीरियड में देखें तो 5% as compared to 1990, इसमें 18% कम करेंगे between the year 2013 and 2020. So then comes the shortcoming of the Kyoto protocols, which were the reasons that do not compelled the Kyoto Protocol in order to success, in order to prevail, and in order to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. There were many reasons behind this. The first reason was the exclusion of the developing states. देखिए हम बहुत सारे developing states थी जो कि in the year 1990s में तो they were not in a state of giant economies, but China and India. देखें ये दो वो कंट्रीज हैं जिसने मेजर पार्ट कंट्रीब्यूट किया है इन द इमिशन ऑफ द ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस, और इन दो कंट्रीज की वजह से ही 2022 में पाकिस्तान में फ्लड्स आए थे। इनकी वजह से, इनकी एमिशन की वजह से देयर वर द ड्रास्टिक इम्पैक्ट्स ऑन द climate of Pakistan, because both are contributing major part in the emission of the greenhouse gases. Second reason was the cause implications. देखिए scientists and other economists, they implied other resources. उन्होंने ये कहा कि भाई अगर हम ग्रीन हाउस एमिशन को कम करते हैं, there will be the loss of jobs. The industries will not be working as compared with the state when we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And the third reason was non-ratification of USA. USA alone contribute 25% in the greenhouse gas emissions, but due to its non-ratification process in the Kyoto Protocol, the Kyoto Protocol was not a success. But on the other hand, it has also its success that it gave awareness to the people, it gave awareness to the countries, it gave awareness to the policymakers in order to reduce that they should work cohesively about combating the greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you so much for watching. See you in the next lecture.